So I'm going to talk about the two path factors today, the first two. Number one is right view, and number two is right intention. Those are the first two path factors. Okay, first path factor, right view. We need to have the right view of two things. That's how it all starts. Ironically, it starts with right view and ends with having that as a normal way of perceiving things. So right view of karma, and right view of the Eightfold Path. So what is right view of karma? In Buddhism, we do not have a divine lawgiver who decides for us what is right and what is wrong. We don't have that. We don't have justice in Buddhism either. We have relative justice in the legal system, and the Christians would have ultimate justice in Christ or God deciding who gets punished and who doesn't. So what does Buddhism have? We have karma. Karma decides for us how skillful or unskillful we are. If we have good karma, that means we suffer less. If we have bad karma, that means we suffer more. Our job is to see how our thought, speech, and action determines the outcome, the consequence. And we need to say, today's a pretty good day. I must have had some good karma happening, because the results of that karma making this a good day. We might have a bad day, and we say, you know what? I must have done something unskillful, because today isn't turning out as good as I thought it would. So maybe I need to change my karma. Karma has three parts. Karma is thought, speech, and action. The least amount of consequence is produced through thinking. Very little consequence of having bad thoughts, because nobody knows the bad thoughts you have. But nobody knows the good thoughts you have either. So there's very little consequence in just thinking unskillful things. When the consequence increases dramatically when we have bad speech. Harsh speech, malicious speech, gossip or idle chatter, false speech. Those four kinds of speech give us negative consequences because they are negative karma. And that does manifest in the world. And we all know that if we say something unskillful to someone, they may never forget it or forgive it for the rest of their life. So we have to be careful with what we say and how we say it if we want to be skillful and have good consequences. Sometimes, when you're talking to people, or someone in particular, you've got nothing good to say about them or to them. You don't like them. You don't want to be in their presence, but you are. They want to talk to you. The skillful Buddhist would say, noble silence is what I'm going to use in this situation. Better to say nothing at all than the wrong thing. Let the other person talk. Let them get it all out. Thank you very much. And then you continue your day. Speech can get us into trouble before we even realize it, because it happens so quickly. All of a sudden, you said something, you didn't even remember what you said. You didn't have any pre-thought. It seemed to happen all by itself. And now you have to beg for forgiveness, take him out for coffee, say, I'm so sorry I said it. Better not to say it in the first place. And finally, action. Not to kill, not to steal, no sexual misconduct, not to consume intoxicants. We need to avoid those things because those things create a lot of negative consequences. You know, For instance, it's a wonderful July evening. You're here at the temple, and there's a mosquito that's just flying around you. And you go, you know what? I'm a Buddhist. Can I not kill? Because I realize killing is unskillful, and there'll be a consequence even if I kill a mosquito. Can I catch it? Take it someplace else? Can I go indoors and leave it outdoors? Can I ignore it? Or can you be a bodhisattva and give your blood as an offering to the mosquito so he can have a long and healthy life? Most people aren't going to be able to do that because you're itching, it builds up on you and you don't. So we're not going to offer our blood to the mosquito. But there are ways we don't have to kill it, and it doesn't have to be a problem. Stealing, taking stuff that isn't yours. You know, all of us have enough stuff. We don't need any more stuff. Even people that don't have much stuff have more stuff than they need. And to take somebody else's stuff creates a lot of bad karma and consequence because those people think they own what you took. We don't own anything. We're just using it. Even if you go to Best Buy to get that big screen TV and pay in cash and they give you a receipt saying that you own it, you don't own it. You're just using it until somebody wants it more than you do, or until it breaks, or until the next model comes out and it's so fantastic you can hardly wait to get it. I had a car back in the 1970s, an Opel Manta. It was parked behind the apartment house that I live in, and I went to work every day, and I really loved my car. It was the first new car I'd ever bought. It was $3,700 out the door. Those were the days. So it's parked in back, and I was going to go to work that day, and I going back to get in my car, and the side window was broken, and where the audio cassette radio used to be, now there was a big hole in the dashboard. I was so disappointed. I couldn't believe it. Who would break into my car? Who would take my radio? And I yelled at my car. I said, "Car, who owns you? Who pays for the insurance? Who makes the monthly payments and changes the oil and buys the gas? Who owns you, car?" And I was waiting to hear the car's answer, and all I heard was silence. The car didn't know I owned it. It was just a car. Somebody else could drive it if they had the key. The car didn't care. You could put bad oil in or really good oil in. Car didn't care. So I realized at that point that I didn't really own anything that I thought I did. And then the next day I looked in the mirror and I said, "Who owns you?" to the reflection in the mirror. And I realized if I owned me, I would look a lot better than what was looking back at me in the mirror. That I couldn't change it. I didn't own me either. And I was going to get old. And I was going to get sick. And I was going to die. Just like the Buddha said. And there was nothing I could do except exercise, take vitamins, eat well, and maybe live a little bit longer or a little bit better until I had to die. Sexual misconduct gets a lot of people in trouble. For some reason, the politicians always seem to get caught. Big headlines. Mistress. Right now we got some headlines about that too. And what did the Buddha say about that? He said, you really need to like the people that you're married to or have intimate relationships with. You don't want to force them in anything. You don't want to be mean to them. You don't want to be angry to them. The whole purpose, literally, the whole purpose of having an intimate relationship is so we can keep the population of Earth at a very high level. We have 8 billion people. We don't need to force anybody to have sex. We got enough people. Maybe we can talk them into not having sex. Maybe we could make them a monk or a nun and reduce the population of Earth and have so many more spiritual people in the world. The Dalai Lama came up with that. He said being a monk or a nun is the best birth control you can have. Consuming intoxicants. What's wrong with having a little wine or a beer? It steals your wisdom. You become really stupid and you do dumb things. And you can break all those other precepts and be so unskillful and not even know you did. That's the problem. You know, and everybody likes to get high. It seems to be something humans like to do. And we have so many different ways to get high. Aren't we lucky? In California, we can smoke marijuana. It's legal. Just another way to get high and lose your clarity and lose your wisdom. Sobriety is a wonderful gift that you give yourself when you stop getting high. You have clarity and you have compassion, and it stays with you. Okay, so karma is our friend. Karma will allow us to live in a skillful, wholesome way with good consequences and less suffering. That's the first thing in right view, the right view of karma. Now we come to the right view of the Noble Eightfold Path. And there are 2 ways of looking at the Noble Eightfold Path. Number 1, intellectual. You buy a book. You read the book on the Eightfold Path. I can recommend a really good book by Bhikkhu Bodhi called The Noble Eightfold Path. It's a little booklet. It's on my website. You can download it for free. It's like 110 pages, and it goes into great detail on the Noble Eightfold Path, and that's what I'm using to give these presentations. So we have an intellectual understanding of the Eightfold Path. We know how it works. Okay. The second way of understanding the Eightfold Path is to do it. We need to do the Eightfold Path. We need to do all those path factors. That gives us a direct experience which cannot be experienced through reading. We have the intellectual reading, and then we have the intuitive doing. So we read it, and we do it, and if we read it, then we can explain it, and if we do it, we don't need to explain it, because it's working for us. So those are the 2 ways of looking at right view. Right view of karma, right view of the Eightfold Path, intellectual understanding, and intuitive doing. Okay, there we go. Pretty simple. Now, second path factor, right intention, also known as right thought. There are 3 aspects to right intention. Number 1, renunciation. Number 2, goodwill. Number 3, non-harming. Those are the 3 aspects of right intention. If those are our only intentions, we will have a good life and good karma and suffer less, and the people in our lives will suffer less as well. So let's talk about right renunciation, understanding renunciation according to the Eightfold Path. It's not about just giving stuff up. You know, the monks aren't supposed to have anything, but they do have stuff. The nuns aren't supposed to have anything, but they do have stuff. But do they own it? They don't own it. They're just using it. People give them gifts. They say thank you. They re-gift it to somebody else who might be able to use it more. It's just a sort of exchange of goods and services that we're involved in, especially in the West and especially in California, especially Los Angeles. Business is going up all the time. People inventing new things to buy, new services to sell you. There's so much out there. And no matter what you get, how often you get it, or how good it is, you're always going to be disappointed ultimately. Remember that everything's ultimately unsatisfactory? Because the new stuff comes out. And everything changes. And you change. And so sometimes you might enjoy playing the guitar, and you play it for 10 years, and then one day you don't want to play it anymore. Why? It happens. Everything changes. So what does this renunciation mean? The renunciation of desire. Not goods and services. Not giving all your stuff up. You're going to practice having less desire. You're going to renounce the desires. So when they arise, you don't act on them in the way that you used to. For instance, sometimes when I get dessert at a restaurant, I will get 2 pieces of chocolate cake because I like chocolate cake, and having 2 pieces is better than having 1 piece. But if I'm practicing renunciation, I will practice only ordering 1 piece of chocolate cake. And maybe eventually I'll order no chocolate cake. The desire will slowly fade away, and it won't be an issue any longer. But the desires are just amazing. You're standing in line, and somebody cuts in front of you. And you say, how could that person cut in front of me in this line that hasn't moved in 10 minutes? And then you realize that person had a really strong desire to be at the front of the line and not have to wait like everybody else until it was their turn. So you can see how desires drive people. And what did the Buddha say about desire? He said that's the main reason we suffer. Because we have strong desires, and we have attachment, and we have clinging, and we want things to be different than they are, and there's nothing we can do about it, and we suffer, or feel uncomfortable, or feel disappointed. Man, so the first intention is the intention of renunciation to reduce your desires. The second intention is the intention of goodwill. Goodwill. And the opposite of goodwill is ill will. You want to have a pleasant intention, hoping everyone is doing well. Like I did the loving kindness meditation, may you be happy, peaceful, and free from suffering. You're intending everybody to feel the happiness and goodwill that you're throwing out into the world. Okay? And if ill will, if anger arises in your mind, your job as a Buddhist, and especially a Buddhist meditator, is to wait for the ill will or anger or hatred to dissipate, slow down, eventually go away. So if you're really angry at someone, you can't do anything until it goes away. Or what you say and what you do will most likely be the wrong thing, and you'll have negative consequences, and you'll feel unhappy, and you'll start suffering again. There is a story about a Japanese samurai warrior who was protecting the king. And somebody on his watch got through and killed the king. And the samurai warrior says, I will avenge your death. I will find the person who killed you, and I will kill them. And he went from village to village and town to town looking for the culprit, the person that killed the king. And finally, asking around, he found somebody that knew where he lived. And he said, now I can avenge it. Now I can avenge my king. And he went and he knocked on the door, and he opened up the door. And there was the guy. And he pulled his sword, and then he put his sword back in the sheath and went away. And somebody said, there he was. Why didn't you kill him and avenge the king? He said, because I was going to kill him because I was angry, not because he killed the king. and I wouldn't kill him out of anger. Okay, goodwill, ill will. Can we not kill the person because out of anger? Yeah, it takes practice though. We need to know how the mind works. We need to be able to watch anger and hatred arise and exist and then pass away. Yeah. Now we come to non-harming, the third aspect, non-harming. Can we go through life and not harm things? You know, I take care of 8 to 12 cats. I have a cat colony at the meditation center. I notice you've got some dogs and cats here too. And it is a wonderful practice. I can encourage anybody that finds a stray cat out there on the sidewalk to give them some food. And then go back the next day and give them some more food. Because what you're practicing is non-harming. Now you're practicing supporting, encouraging life. Realizing that humans and dogs and cats and all the street life is suffering. And you can make a difference. And I have people on my Facebook page who send me donations for the cat food. So what am I doing? I'm sharing the merit of feeding the cats with anybody who'd be interested. And some people donate every month because they want the cats to be fat and fluffy. They don't want them to die. So in this idea of non-harming, can we go through life and not cause anything to feel uncomfortable because of our presence? Can we have goodwill towards everyone we come in contact with, or at least have equanimity? If you don't like them, at least have equanimity and balance in the way you approach them. And can you refrain from harming living beings and encourage those living beings to have a better life because you're in it? And I think we can. I think the Buddhist path is really a path that starts with, and this is controversial, it starts with compassion. And if you have enough compassion, you'll be wise as well. So the two wings of Buddhism, wisdom and compassion. Some forms of Buddhism start with wisdom. Some forms of Buddhism start with compassion. Let me give you my definition of compassion. We have an intention of love and kindness. Once that intention turns into activity, the act of kindness I call compassion. Until it manifests in the world, it's all in your mind and it's only an intention, and it's a good intention. But in order for the good intention to make a difference in the world, you need to do something. You can't just think good thoughts. You have to have good speech and do good actions. So compassion is the activity of kindness. And some people don't need to know anything about Buddhism. And if their whole life is based on the activity of kindness and compassion, they will have a better life than most people have in the world who know everything and don't do anything. So I'm going to stop there because this has been a lot of stuff, and ask if anybody has a question or a comment on what I've said, or does it make any sense at all? Or have you heard it before in a different way, and this is another way? And this is how I understand it, because I was born in Iowa, and I was a Lutheran. And they have a much different approach to spirituality. So I converted to Buddhism in 1979, I think. Became a lay Buddhist. And in 1994, I became a novice monk. And in 1996, I became a fully ordained monk. And I have sort of an American Buddhist understanding of the Dharma. which may or may not be what you're used to hearing. But if you have young people in your family and they're going into the school system, they're going to hear Buddhism in a different way than at the temple. And I have spoken at many high schools, and I have spoken at many colleges on Buddhism. And a lot of times it's the first time they've ever heard anything about Buddhism. So we need to educate people that Buddhism has been around for a really long time, and it's here to stay, and it's a good way to live your life, and it doesn't have to be religious. Buddhism can be broken down into a couple different ways. Number one, Buddhism can be a therapy. And at UCLA, they have a whole thing on mindfulness meditation as a way of therapeutic and feeling better and becoming mentally pure and having clarity. And that's one way to do it. Buddhism can be a lifestyle. You wear all cotton shirts. You go see the Dalai Lama. You become a vegetarian. That's the lifestyle. Buddhism, though, for me, has always been a religion, a spiritual path, a way to become a better person and to understand the world in a much more skillful way. So there are many ways of looking at it. And I'm just lucky that I found Buddhism at the meditation center where I now live and have lived for 30 years. And that started my life in a completely different direction. And I'm so grateful that that is the case.